Hello everybody and welcome back to our JavaScript series. So we're going through a lot of the JavaScript fundamentals right now, and in this video we're going to talk about type conversion and then type coercion and what that is and why it's important to know. But before we jump into that, let me just quickly show you inside my index.html what I have. And basically I have the boilerplate code with a few images, and you don't even need that part. And then in here, I have basically the bottom line of my body is this scripts tag that links to script.js. So let's go back into script.js now. And you can see here I'm logging JS type conversion and type coercion. And then in my console log, I get JS type conversion and type coercion. So this is working just like we expect it to. So real quick, let's look at what is type conversion. And you'll remember last time I said if you declare a variable with the let keyword, then I can change this later down the line. So let's say let my condition equal true. So I've got this variable, and let's go ahead and log that. So console.log my condition, comma, type of my condition. Now let's put a semicolon and save that, and you can see here I get true, and this is of type Boolean. And now if down here, I said if we declare a variable with the let keyword, then I can actually change this later on. So I could come down here and say false, and that would change it from true to false, changing the value within my Boolean variable. But when we're talking about type conversion, we're talking about actually changing a variable from one type, in this case a Boolean, to another type. So if I came in here, instead of false, I put inside quotes false. Now you should note this is actually going to give me a string. So let's copy that line and then move that down, save that, and now you see I get, over here in my log, I get true in the purple, and then blue, it says Boolean, and then beneath that I get false in white, indicating that this is a string, and then string for the data type. So I've actually now converted this my condition variable from a Boolean data type to a string data type. And I'll mention just here as well, I have this in quotes right here, but another way that I could do that, instead of doing quotes, you can actually make a string with the string function here. So if I say string and then false, this is going to take whatever is inside of these parentheses and convert that into a string. So now if I save this, I get the same exact thing. So string false, and then putting this in quotes is the same way to do that. So I can convert this to anything I want. It could be a string, it could be a number, it could be an array, it could be really whatever I want. So now if I come here, let's copy that, move that down a little bit, and then let's convert this to something else. So my condition equals, and then down here we'll say A is going to be 1, B 2, and then C is going to be 3. So if I go ahead and move this log down as well, now if I save all of this, you can see I've got my, initially it was a Boolean, then it was a string, and then down here it's an array or an object here as it's called in the more generic term. And also down here in my object literal, it's become an object. You can see I've got an array. I've got an array here for this top one, and then an object down here. So I can actually, in JavaScript, convert any variable to any other data type at any point within my application. And this is something that you can't do in a lot of other programming languages. So if you're used to like C or C# or C++ or any of those, this is going to be new for you. Kind of the idea of JavaScript type conversion. And then down here, I'll show you basically what type coercion is. And that's if, let's say we have a number. So I can say we'll say num1 is equal to 5. And then down here, I can say let num2 is equal to, and then inside quotes, if I say 15, and then down here, if I were to have a third variable, so let sum equal And then if we say num1 plus num2, so what do you think is going to happen? We have a variable num1 that's of type number, and then a variable num2 of type string, and this is 5 and this is 15. But the way computers work, what's going to happen if we take a number and then a number that's stored in a string and add them together? Well, let's go ahead and find out. So now if I do console.log, and in here, if I say sum, and then comma, type of sum, now when I save this and I see it here, I see 515 string. So what this has done, because it's seen that I have a string in here, and even though this is a number, because I'm adding with a plus sign, I'm adding number1 to num2, because num2 is a string, it's going to automatically convert the 5 of a number data type into a string data type, which is going to give me the equivalent of basically, the equivalent is sum equals, and then in quotes, 515. So that's why num1 plus num2, which is 5 plus 15, is actually giving me 515, because it's actually not doing a mathematical operation. It's just concatenating those two together as a string. Now, if I wanted to do this differently, what I could do is down here, if I say let sum2 equal, and then num1 plus, and then here, if I say parse int, and then inside of my parse int, I say num2. Now let's go ahead and copy this line and move it down and change this to sum2, and then this to sum2 as well. Let's go ahead and save that. And now you see 5 plus 15 actually equals 20, which in this case is a number. So the reason we're getting a number here is because num1 is obviously a number, and then num2 is of course a number, but it's stored in a string data type. But when I run this parse int function on a string data type, it's going to convert this string data type into a number data type before I actually do my operation here. So that's why when I add 5 and 15, I get 20, which is what I would be and should be. And just to further explain what's going on here, if I come down here and if I say const first equals Tim, and then const last equals Fisher. Now, if I were to come down here and make a third variable and say const full name is equal to first plus, and then here I'm just going to have a string with a space, and then plus last, and then console.log full name. If I go ahead and save this, you can see I get Tim space Fisher. So when I have various strings like this, and I'm putting a plus sign in between string data types, basically this plus sign is not a mathematical operation. This plus sign is going to be doing what we call string concatenation, which is just shoving two strings together and putting it into one string now. So if this first plus and then space and then plus last would actually be the same as if I were to come down here and say const full name 2 is equal to, and then in quotes, Tim Fisher. So this one and then this one will give you actually the exact same result. And that's why up here, when you see 515 string, that's why when you have the sum equal to num1 plus num2, because num2 is a string, that is basically going to default both of these numbers to string before running this plus sign here, which is our string concatenation operation. And that's why when you do it here, you get 515, and when you do it here, you get 20, because this one is doing string concatenation. Let me just type that out here, string concatenation. And then down here, this one is doing a addition, essentially. So let's say we have a few more numbers down here. Maybe I'll just say we have const pi, and that's 3.14. Actually, let's put that in quotes. We could say 3.141. So this is actually a string. And I told you before, right, if we have a string and we want to get it to a number, we can use this parse int function. But if I try that, so console.log, and then here we can do parse int, and then inside of these parentheses, I can write pi, which is the name of my constant up here. Now let's go ahead and save that, and you see I get a 3. Because an int, of course, is an integer, which is only a whole number. So if we want to get a float, we can do parse float, and that'll give us the actual floating point number, or the decimal number of pi. And if I want to convert this just generically to a number, I can also just say number and save that, and that will also give us the floating point as well. So this number is a little more flexible than, say, the parse int is. And then with that being said, let's say I have another number down here that is actually a number. So const number equals 3000. And if I want to get this number into a string, I can convert it to a string by saying const my string number is equal to number dot, and then there's a toString function here. And now if I do console.log and then say my string number, and here if I say type of and then my string number, now if I save that, you see this number that was a number up here on line 42, it's coming back as 3000 in a string. So if you have a string and you want to go to a number, you can use parse int, parse float, or number. And if you have a number like this and you want to go to a string, you can do the dot to string, or the other way I showed you earlier, you can also do string, and then in here, if I put number, this will actually give me the same exact thing. So I have the string, and then inside the parentheses number, and then I can also do number dot to string. So that's just ways that you can convert back from numbers to strings and vice versa. Now let's say down here I have 3 more numbers in here. So I can say const 1 is equal to 1, and then const 2 is equal to 2, and then let's do const 3 is equal, or actually let's do 0. Const 0 is equal to 0. And now if I come down here and if I say console.log, so these numbers, we can actually convert numbers to booleans as well. So if I just come in here and type boolean, and then in here if I put 1, and then let's copy that line 2 more times, and then this one I'm going to put 2, and then this one I'm going to put 0. So now if I go ahead and save that file, you can see I get true, true, and false. So basically, when we convert 1 to Boolean, we get true. When we convert 2 to Boolean, we get true. And when we convert 0 to Boolean, we get false. So even if I make this 200, I still get true. And basically, the way that Boolean works is anything that's not 0 is going to be converted to a true, and then 0 is going to be converted to a false. So there's actually a couple more conversion methods for different data types that I'm not going to talk about in this video, but if you click the link and read it, the link down in the description below, there's an article there with other less common conversion types. So this has just more or less been a fairly basic overview of JavaScript data type conversion, and then we mentioned a little bit about Java data type coercion as well. So with that being said, make sure to leave any comments or questions you have down in the comments below and practice this, read the documentation, the article linked below, and then we will see you in the next video.